Here's Stratagem, Chapter 4. Brody was turned away from me, his head resting on the back of the love seat. I was surprised he wasn't watching me. He seemed a little too trusting. I could only hope. I didn't have much time. Under the blanket, I pushed the flap of my jacket back and gently pulled out the cell phone while trying not to move the blanket too much. When I had it in my hands, I tucked it between my legs, trying to remember the buttons, feeling them and counting them to find the number that I needed. My life depended on it. "Why you?" Brody spoke softly, but suddenly. I jumped and the phone almost slipped out of my hands and would have clattered to the rough hardwood floor, but I clamped my legs together to catch it as I held my breath. "Why you? Why you when there are others?" He was quiet. I didn't want him to come over and find the phone, but I couldn't answer his question because I wasn't sure what he was asking me. "What do you mean, others?" "Others. There are others like you, right?" His head still rested on the couch. I thought about his question. I didn't even know how many mimics there were. I only knew of my mother, but I hadn't seen her in years. There was one. My guard John told me about her. He was the only person at the agency who ever talked to me, even though he wasn't supposed to. He also delivered books to me, to keep me occupied in my one-room cell. I don't know how he knew that I loved to read, unless someone told him I was the daughter of a librarian. He told me about a mimic who was younger than me, and from what he told me, she sounded ruthless. She arrived there as an orphan and was trained to be an assassin, a product of the agency. Unlike me, she was loyal. She wasn't a prisoner. I wouldn't share this information with Brody, though. I didn't want him to think of me as unique or valuable. That seemed dangerous. "There are enough," I lied, trying to make myself sound unimportant. "Why you?" I looked down, my thoughts flitting to my mother and then back. "I'm good," I finally answered. "I'm good at what I do." I wasn't sure how accurate that statement was, but I got the job done. "Well, you got caught, so you can't be that good." And then, what came out next I knew I shouldn't have said after it left my lips. "I have everything to lose," I answered quickly, then bit the corner of my mouth. I silently cursed myself, but I wanted Brody to know that he was right, what he said to Aaron, that this wasn't a choice that I made for myself. I was forced. I didn't know why it was important. I guess I thought that it would help him get over what I was about to do to these boys. Brody turned and eyed me from the love seat. "Don't you think others have things to lose? Don't you think that they are holding things over their heads?" He leaned forward as though to get up, and I held my breath, not daring to move a muscle. Then Brody turned back and stared into the fire. "So you're good at pretending to be other people?" "I've always had to pretend." I pushed the first button on my phone, holding my breath in hopes that it didn't make a sound. When it didn't, I exhaled gently. I must have silenced it before I put it in my pocket. I closed my eyes, trying to picture the numbers. When I got to the final digit, I hesitated. I wasn't sure what the agency would do in a situation like this. Maybe they would reward my loyalty. They could still use me for the job, but if they found out what I told these boys, and they thought the boys knew too much, Brody, Aaron, and Dan would be dead right alongside me. There was no way that these three could outwit the agency. They were teenagers. I held my breath and pushed the button. Brody turned, his eyes boring into me. I had the sudden sensation that he knew exactly what I did. My face flushed. "You should rest," he said, turning away. My heart pounded in my ears. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and sat and stared at the fire. There was no telling when they would arrive. I should have been prepared, sharp, but instead I was exhausted. My eyes were heavy, and my head kept drooping. I dozed here and there, but awoke abruptly when Brody opened the door. He held it open and let the cool fall air enter. I could smell the grass on the breeze. When we arrived, it was dawn, but now the afternoon sun was fading into the night. I wondered if I pressed the right button on the phone. I somewhat hoped I didn't. If the agency came, and I was lucky, I would go back to my pre-existing state. If the agency came and decided to erase every trace of this mission gone wrong, then the struggle would be over. Either way, I seemed doomed to be held captive or be dead. My fate would be decided for me. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that I probably hadn't done the right thing by notifying them, but truthfully, it had been a long time since I knew what the right thing really was. I was so used to following orders. The bedroom door opened and Aaron came out. He didn't so much as look at me, but made his way to Brody's side. Brody looked back at him. He raised his eyebrows and Brody nodded. More nonverbal cues that I couldn't decipher. The two interacted with the ease of a close friendship, like they had known each other for a long time. I broke the silence. Who are you guys? Who do you work for? You wouldn't know us, Brody answered, still searching for something outside. What do you care? Aaron asked, studying me. I don't know if you know who you're dealing with. I frowned. It came out sounding like a threat. Aaron laughed. Honey, you don't even know who you're dealing with. In the grand scheme of things, you're only a pawn. You have no real power, though you think you do. Aaron walked in the kitchen and grabbed an apple. He pulled a knife out of the drawer and slowly quartered the apple. He was wrong. I knew I had no power. They'll kill you if you know things, I said. What was supposed to be a warning again came out sounding like a threat. I was trying to get it across to them, the danger that they were in. Aaron looked up, away from the apple. Before Brody could react, Aaron took 3 long strides so he was standing in front of me, then crouched down. Are you stupid? Aaron yelled at me, spit hitting my face. He was an inch away, and his cheeks were flushed and his ears were red. I tried to stay calm, but I couldn't take my eyes off the knife clenched in his fist. Aaron was unstable. There was no telling what he would do to get the information he wanted. You don't think I know that? Do you really think they will ever let you go, or your family? Aaron, Brody called out. He grabbed Aaron's elbow and pulled him back. You're not mad at her. She's not responsible for this. Brody was once again defending me. Who the heck was this guy? And what game was he playing? I willed myself to believe Brody couldn't be that nice. It would make what happened next easier. Aaron shook Brody off. Yes, she is. She's a coward. If she refused, then her family would be dead. Brody said those last words gently, but the fire had not gone out in Aaron. Aaron threw down the knife with such force the tip of the blade dug into the wood floor and held. Instead, mine is. He pushed by Brody and walked out the open front door. I could hear his large boots stomping down the porch steps. Brody bent down and pried the knife out of the board. He examined it, then looked at me. His brow creased as though waiting for me to speak. I couldn't. Aaron's family was dead. I had no idea if whatever happened resulted in a general hate for mimics, or if it was something I specifically had done. But I didn't kill. That was one thing I didn't do on my missions. I was beginning to understand why Aaron hated me so much, but there wasn't anything I could do about it. Brody walked to the table and put the knife down. He pulled a chair in front of me and pulled me closer so our knees were touching. He slowly drew the blanket from me. He was calm. I was not. So what was Mr. Gray supposed to do? You have to tell me, Meda. Aaron won't wait forever. We can't make our next move until you tell me the truth. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Please. Haven't I been kind to you? Haven't I tried to give you all the fairness I can? Treat me with some respect. Tell me. I wanted to help. I fell hard for his good cop act. I wanted to share everything with Brody. He had been kind. In fact, I had not received this much kindness from anyone in a long time. But I couldn't tell. I couldn't put my family at risk, not to mention Brody. And soon he would know about my betrayal anyway. So none of it mattered. And then I would find out if he was just playing good cop. The door opened, slamming hard into the wall behind it. Aaron rushed in, eyes wide and breathing heavy. In the breeze, the whir of an engine made its way into the small cabin. "They're here," Aaron whispered. "She did it." Brody's eyes bore into me as he opened the side of my jacket and plucked out my cell phone. He knew exactly where it was. He had known it the entire time. "I felt it on you when we were in the trunk." I was confused. Why didn't he take it? Meda, I know exactly when you signaled them. My computer notified me." He shook his head, sighing. "You tricked me? So much for the good guy." I spoke quickly, words pouring out with no fear of their reaction. "I'm sorry, Brody. I had to. If I don't get back to them, they'll kill my family. I have to follow orders. If I don't do my job, my 2 little sisters are dead. So is my father." "Yeah, I get that. But instead, we're dead," Brody answered. His voice was flat. Dan made his way into the room with a gun in his hand and dressed in a warm flannel jacket. Aaron shoved one of the ratty love seats aside to reveal a door leading to a basement or cellar.